So in Module 14 of the Freedom Ticket, I want to talk about category approval. The products that you choose to sell on Amazon have to be classified in a certain category. And some of these categories require approval in advance from Amazon to sell in. Other categories don't require any approval. They're kind of like free game. Now, the category that you decide to put your product in is super important for a number of factors. When you go and you're kind of looking around on Amazon, if you look on the page, you can actually, if you look down in the information where the BSR is and the shipping weight and all that stuff, they'll have some categories down there. And sometimes when you do a search, you'll see that certain products are in almost all the same category, or sometimes you'll see some products are in a wide range of categories, depending on how the seller decided to classify them. The category you go in, though, has something called relevance. And so some people try to game the system by putting their items in categories that are not quite as competitive. So they have a better chance of maybe getting a bestseller badge or something like that. But what happens is Amazon actually has a master list of keywords, a master database. They have human beings that go through and they look at all the different keywords, all the different search terms, and they decide which ones are relevant for which category. Because you don't want stuff that starts showing up in the search engine just because someone put it in their listing and some sort of keyword search term in there, and it's not relevant at all. So you wouldn't want some sort of, someone calls their product something with a baby name or a keyword that's relevant to a baby to show up in the automotive department if it's not relevant at all. So Amazon has a whole master list of keywords. It's called relevancy. If you're not relevant, you actually will not show up. So the category you go into is important, because if there's certain keywords that you want to make sure that you're ranked for, and if you choose the wrong category, it can actually hurt you on your sales on Amazon. So you got to keep that in mind. But when you're choosing a category, or when you're looking at products, you're going to have to decide which category you might going to go into. And one of the ways you do that is by looking at the competition and seeing what they're in. But some of the categories require approval in advance. So I recommend, as a new seller, that you kind of stay away from these categories if you can, because sometimes you have to get what's called ungated in those categories. You might have to pay Amazon a fee to be ungated, or there's some companies that actually will do this for you, that will actually go out and do the process. But you got to be careful. Some of these companies, they fabricate invoices and they do things that they shouldn't be doing. Another way to get ungated is if maybe you go and you might have to do a little bit of wholesale. You might have to find like a supplier in the United States. You're going to have to maybe order something from them and get probably like 3 different invoices to show Amazon that's legitimate. Sometimes you can actually go in and you can actually hit a little button. And what I've done in the past is where I just act like I'm going to sell something. So if you're ever curious and you're not sure, is my account ungated or not, you can go into to add a product, and there's a process there. If you take a look at the handout, it shows you the exact process. But you go in there and you say add a product, you choose a category, and then you can just choose a random product in that category. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be yours. This is just a little test method. It could be some other products in that category, and see if Amazon will allow you to sell that product or not. If it comes back and says you're not authorized to sell in this category, then you know that's a category for your account that you're going to have to get ungated for. And the ungating process, it can be, it's not bad, but for a new seller, it can be a little bit of a cumbersome. So I recommend that you don't choose products initially that are in one of these gated categories if you can avoid it. Now, some examples. The full list is down in the handouts below, but the full for examples, beauty is typically not gated. There's a couple items in beauty that are, but most of the beauty category is ungated, so it's kind of wide open. Health and personal care is another really popular one. Pets is another popular one. Home and garden, luggage and travel, office supplies, outdoor stuff, anything sports and outdoors, tools and home improvement. Those are some examples of some common categories that people go into that don't require advance approval. But some of the ones that, for example, that do require advance approval would be like automotive or fine jewelry, not like costume jewelry, but like fine jewelry, or gourmet food requires approval, or some of the toys and games requires approval. Not all year long, but like at Christmas time, Amazon has some very special rules from like November to the end of December and into January of who can sell toys or not. And you have to meet certain requirements. So if you're brand new and you're planning on launching in the 4th quarter and you're going to be doing toys or games, you want to take a hard look at getting approval for that. Typically, you're going to have some sort of sales history on Amazon before they will approve you in those categories for Christmas time. Another one is like watches or industrial and scientific. Those are some categories that sometimes require a little bit of extra proof and approval from Amazon. So you want to be careful when you're doing this, because it can throw a hindrance in your sales. If you haven't checked to make sure you're authorized to sell in that category, and you've done all this work and all this sourcing, and then when you buy the product and when you go to list it on Amazon, something happens and you can't do it. You don't want to put yourself in that situation. Sometimes what you might have to do is actually buy a small quantity from somebody. I mean, I've done this in the past where if I was going to sell something in the automotive category and I'm making these in China, what I might do is I'll find a wholesaler in the US and buy like 10 or 15 units. You can't just buy one or two. You got to have a decent quantity. But buy 10, 15, 20 units of some sort of item as a wholesaler, and then go to Amazon and try to sell those. And Amazon says, sorry, you can't. You need to show us proper invoices from the manufacturer. And so I then have the official invoices, because sometimes Amazon will actually call them and to verify everything and make sure that you didn't Photoshop or fake the invoices. And so that's a way that I've gotten ungated. Just you kind of do kind of like just a little small sell of something to get ungated in one of those categories. But if you can at all possible, avoid those headaches when you're first starting and go into one of the ungated categories. And if you take a look in the handouts, there's some lists there and some links to give you some ideas of where you want to be. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing your products, because it's super, super important, not only to make sure you can actually sell it, but the category you choose is crucial to that relevancy factor. And sometimes certain keywords that may be relevant, if you put yourself in the wrong category, Amazon's going to say those keywords aren't relevant for that category, and it can mean that you don't show up in the search results for that. So it's a crucial thing to make sure you're in the right category.